Welcome, everyone. Today we step into feudal Japan, AD 1517, a land of warring clans, treacherous valleys, and fragile loyalties. In the shadow of Arita Castle, rival armies prepare to clash, and a young warlord faces a challenge that could define his destiny. On one side stood the Takeda clan of Aki, a proud local family, mustering their forces to seize dominance. Opposing them, outnumbered yet unbroken, were the fledgling Mōri troops, led by the youthful Mōri Motonari, no more than 20 years old. Amid the dense forests, narrow rivers, and steep ridges near Arita Castle, arrows would fly, katana and naginata would clash, and the course of a clan's destiny would be decided in a single, fateful battle. This is the Battle of Arita-Nakaide. During the early 16th century, the western reaches of Honshū were dominated by the powerful Uchi clan. From their stronghold in Suo province, the Uchi extended their power eastward, bringing the neighboring provinces of Iwami and Aki under their control. Their influence also stretched across the inland sea, reaching the shores of northern Kyushu through trade and political alliances. Within Aki, local samurai families, such as the Takeda and the Mōri, served as their vassals. Around AD 1507, Uchi Yoshioki, the powerful daimyo of Suo province, led a campaign toward Kyoto to restore Ashikaga Yoshitane to the shogunate. Among his retainers was Takeda Motoshige, a regional lord from Aki province, who joined the expedition in support of the Uchi cause. However, by around AD 1515, Motoshige had returned to Aki and severed his allegiance to the Uchi, aligning himself instead with their rivals, the Yamago clan. At this time, the Mōri clan, vassals of the Uchi, were neighbors of the Takeda in Aki province. In AD 1516, following the death of Mori Okimoto, his young son Komatsu Maru succeeded him. Sensing an opportunity, Takeda Motoshige, in the following year, assembled an army of approximately 5,000 men and in October advanced into the territory of the Mori's Yoshikawa allies, ultimately surrounding Arita Castle. However, Takeda Motoshige was not satisfied with merely surrounding Arita Castle. A few weeks later, he led a daring raid into Mori territory, setting fire to the homes in Tajihi and sowing chaos among the local populace. In response, the Mori clan swiftly mobilized their forces under the command of Mōri Motonari, the younger brother of Okimoto and guardian of the young Komatsu Maru. With the majority of Uchi forces occupied in Kyoto alongside Uchi Yoshioki, the Mōri were unable to call upon their overlords for support. Undeterred, Mōri Motonari mobilized his clan and rallied their allies, including the Awaya, Fukuhara, Inoue, Kuchiba, and Watanabe families. He was further reinforced by his younger brother, Mori Mototsuna. In total, Motonari's forces numbered approximately 800 men, augmented by 300 troops from the Yoshikawa clan, bringing his army to roughly 1,100 warriors, a modest force poised to confront a much larger enemy. The morning mist still clung to the slopes of the narrow valley as Mōri Motonari's army pressed forward, boots crunching over frost-hardened earth. The scent of damp soil and cold metal hung in the air. From the ridge ahead, the Takeda vanguard emerged, a compact force of 500 men led by the stalwart Kumagai Motonau. Their banners fluttered in the pale sunlight. Green and white streamed in the wind, gleaming like fresh leaves against the gray dawn. Mori's archers drew their bows in silent anticipation, the taut sinew humming with tension. Motonari's eyes scanned the enemy formation, noting the tight discipline of the vanguard. Across the valley, Kumagai Motonau's voice rang out, firm and resolute, carrying over the clamor of anxious soldiers.
Hold your ground. Let the Mōri know that the Takeda do not yield.
The first volley of arrows whistled through the morning air. Some missed, some clanged harmlessly on armor, but one struck true. A sharp cry rose as Kumagai Motonau staggered, an arrow piercing his chest. He fell to the ground, the echo of his collapse resonating through the ranks. A stunned silence followed, broken only by the clattering of dropped weapons and panicked whispers. Without their commander, the Takeda vanguard teetered on the edge of disorder. Mōri Motonari did not hesitate. His voice, commanding and calm, cut through the chaos.
Forward! Do not give them time to breathe.
The Mōri soldiers surged, disciplined and synchronized, spears thrust outward, meeting the faltering Takeda lines. Archers on the flanks released another volley, each arrow a harbinger of death. Dust rose in choking clouds, swirling with the cries of men and the clash of steel. Katana met naginata, the ringing shock of metal against metal reverberating across the valley walls. The smell of sweat, blood, and fear mingled, almost suffocating. Yet the Mōri ranks pressed on relentlessly. Amid the maelstrom, Motonari moved like a shadow across the front. He lifted his voice, rallying his warriors.
Push forward, break their line.
He gestured toward gaps forming in the enemy formation, directing men to exploit every weakness. Takeda soldiers tried to regroup, forming hesitant lines, but each attempt crumbled under the precise coordination of Mōri's forces. Panic spread like wildfire. Soldiers stumbled over one another in retreat, some screaming, some silent with shock. The Takeda vanguard, now shattered, scattered into the folds of the terrain, leaving a chaotic trail of broken banners and abandoned weapons. Yet the Takeda main force remained beyond the hills, waiting, a looming storm over the valley, a grim reminder that this skirmish was but the prelude. Motonari stood at the forefront, chest heaving, eyes scanning the receding enemy, aware that the true battle, the showdown with the main Takeda army, was yet to come. The defeated Takeda forces withdrew toward Arita Castle, where they hastily constructed a fortified camp. Yet during the night, Mōri Motonari received fresh reinforcements, bolstering his small army. At dawn, he launched a sudden assault on the Takeda encampment, overrunning the defenses and scattering the garrison. When news of the attack reached Takeda Motoshige, he left behind a small detachment to contain the defenders at Arita Castle, while he led the main body of his army to confront the outnumbered Mōri forces in open battle, determined to crush them decisively. Next day, across the swollen Uchikawa River, the Takeda main force under Motoshige had arrived. The cold waters glimmered like steel, forming a natural barrier between the two armies. Takeda banners snapped sharply in the wind, a crimson sea of resolve and vengeance. Motonari's eyes narrowed. He could see the tension in his men, the exhaustion from the morning's clash mixing with the anticipation of the true battle. Beside him, Yoshikawa's warriors adjusted their grips on their weapons, knuckles white against the hafts of spears and bows. Motonari raised his hand, and silence fell, broken only by the distant roar of water and the occasional clang of armor as the Takeda prepared to advance. Then Motoshige's forces surged forward. The river, ankle to knee-deep in parts, became a battlefield itself. The first Takeda lines splashed through the cold current, feet slipping over smooth stones, weapons raised high. Mōri's archers loosed a volley, arrows streaking through the mist, but sheer numbers carried many of the enemy onward. Motonari's voice rang over the chaos.
Hold, do not break. Stand your ground or we are lost.
Despite his commands, the Allied troops wavered. Outnumbered and pressed by relentless charges, some faltered, stepping back with faces pale and hearts racing. Dust, water, and blood mingled, turning the battlefield into a chaotic mire. The shouts of men, the clash of metal, and the cries of the wounded created a cacophony that drowned even the river's roar. By the riverbank, the clash was brutal and intimate. Soldiers slipped and stumbled in the mud, grappling with enemies chest to chest, blades sliding against armor, blood mixing with water and soil. Each cry of pain, each clash of steel, seemed to echo the desperation of a battle that would decide the fate of this valley. Then Motoshige himself charged into the fray, mounted high on a warhorse, armor glinting, a figure of imposing authority. His presence reinvigorated his troops, giving them courage and a single-minded purpose. With a sharp gesture, he led a charge straight across the river toward the wavering Allied line. Motonari, realizing the danger, surged forward himself, rallying his men with words and gestures.
For honor, for the fallen, do not yield.
Motoshige's cavalry thundered through the shallow waters, splashing the river into froth, swords raised high, the very earth seeming to tremble beneath their charge. For a moment, time itself held its breath. The men of both armies froze in terror and awe as leader met leader. The fresh onslaught from the Takeda cavalry nearly broke the exhausted Mōri soldiers, their bodies straining under the weight of fatigue and fear. Yet the blood debt of Tajihi's innocent had not yet been repaid. Fate chose this moment to exact its toll. Like a reincarnation of the war god Hachiman, a single samurai became the instrument of vengeance, a living arrow of justice. From Motonari's line, a bowstring sang, and an arrow streaked through the morning haze with unerring precision. Time seemed to slow. The arrow struck Motoshige in the chest. He reeled, shock flashing across his eyes, and for a heartbeat the world spun around him. Then, with a choking cry, he collapsed from his saddle into the icy river, water rising around him. A stunned silence rippled through the Takeda ranks, disbelief, grief, and fear mingling like storm clouds over their once proud force. The Takeda, leaderless after the deaths of Kumagai Motonau and Motoshige, faltered completely. Cavalry charges lost their precision, infantry hesitated, and the once mighty army wavered under relentless volleys of arrows and the disciplined advance of Mori's spearmen. Panic rippled through their ranks like wildfire, and soon the enemy line cracked. Men stumbled, fled, and abandoned their banners, leaving the valley echoing with the clash of retreating boots and the mournful cries of those left behind. The innocent of Tajihi had been avenged. The debt of blood was repaid, yet the cost weighed heavily. The Battle of Arita-Nakaide was a pivotal engagement in western Honshū during the early 16th century. It has often been compared to the Battle of Okehazama, in which Oda Nobunaga defeated the numerically superior forces of Imagawa Yoshimoto, and has therefore been referred to as the Okehazama of the West. The battle marked a critical turning point, resulting in the decline of the Takeda clan of Aki and the consolidation of power by the Mōri clan. The Takeda suffered the loss of several key leaders, including Takeda Motoshige, Kumagai Motonau, and Yukikage Kagawa, which substantially weakened their capacity to maintain authority over Aki province. Following this defeat, the Takeda rapidly lost influence and were eventually subjugated and eliminated by the Mōri family, thereby securing Mōri Motonari's ascendancy in the region. Simultaneously, the Uchi clan, preoccupied with campaigns in Kyoto and other distant matters, were unable to intervene, highlighting the limitations of their control over remote vassals. The engagement exposed vulnerabilities in the Uchi's territorial authority and contributed to a gradual decline in their dominance over western Honshū.